3 weeks after my nursing pinning ceremony, I stood beside the first base dugout holding a clipboard I had helped my brother build. 84 children were spread across 4 practice stations under a June sun. Parents filled the aluminum bleachers. A local sporting goods store had hung its banner behind home plate. My brother Caleb moved between the batting cages with a photographer following him. Monroe Baseball Fundamentals had been open for less than an hour. I had agreed to help. Caleb first brought up the clinic months earlier, when it was still a rough budget on Dad's kitchen table. I reviewed emergency contacts, helped write the heat policy, and trained the coaches on asthma plans, minor injuries, and when to stop a drill. I was not supposed to run the clinic. I was there for opening weekend, while Caleb arranged for a certified athletic trainer to cover the remaining dates. At 9:30, I checked the schedule and saw the first water break was missing. The version I approved called for a 10-minute break after every 40-minute rotation. The copies in the coach's hands showed 90-minute blocks with 1 break in the middle. I found Caleb near the pitching machine. "Where are the breaks?" He glanced at the photographer. "We tightened the rotations." "It's already over 90. There are coolers at every field." Several children had asthma plans. One was taking medication that could make heat harder on him. Another parent had written that her daughter had fainted during summer practice the year before. Caleb said parents had paid for instruction, not for children to stand in the shade. I took the master schedule from the registration table and started restoring the breaks. Caleb put one hand over the page. "Wait until after the sponsor tour." The store's regional representatives were due at 11. Caleb believed the visit could lead to a fall program, better equipment, and a paid coaching contract. I told him the schedule was not a suggestion. He said I was treating a baseball clinic like an emergency department. Before I could answer, a whistle blew near second base. A 12-year-old girl named Morgan staggered backward, reached for the coach beside her, and dropped to the dirt. By the time I reached her, she was unconscious. Her coach stood over her saying she had been fined seconds earlier. One of the other children started crying. Morgan's mother ran down from the bleachers. Morgan woke after less than a minute, confused and frightened. When we helped her sit up, she vomited beside the baseline. I called the complex office and asked for their medical staff. Then I ordered every coach to stop the drills and move the children into the shade. Caleb reached us while the complex medic was checking Morgan's pulse. His first question was whether we really needed to stop all 4 stations. Morgan's mother heard him. So did the medic. I told Caleb to move. The medic recommended that Morgan be taken to urgent care for evaluation. Her mother helped her into a golf cart while I collected the health form and medication list. Dad arrived carrying 2 cases of water. Mom started directing children toward the coolers. The coaches restarted the clinic after the complex medic approved it, but the sponsor tour was delayed. Caleb followed me behind the equipment shed. "You made that look 10 times worse. She lost consciousness. For a few seconds. She was vomiting. And now she's talking." I asked who removed the breaks. Caleb admitted he had. Parents complained during his private sessions that children spent too much paid time resting. He wanted opening day to look active. I told him the original schedule would be restored immediately. He said it would. I made him repeat it in front of Coach Ralston. That afternoon, I completed an incident report. I wrote that Morgan's station had continued beyond the scheduled break and that her coach had told the children to wait until the rotation ended before drinking. Caleb watched me place the report inside the clinic binder. He did not object. Morgan was diagnosed with heat exhaustion and released from urgent care that afternoon. She was expected to recover fully. My parents repeated that sentence whenever the clinic came up. Morgan was fine. The clinic continued. Nothing permanent happened. By Sunday evening, the story had already softened. Dad told Coach Ralston that Morgan might have skipped breakfast. Mom told my aunt that Morgan had become anxious in the heat. Caleb said she had arrived dehydrated. I asked where those details came from. No one knew. At dinner, Dad said I should be relieved instead of searching for someone to blame. Caleb said the water breaks were back and the problem was over. I reminded him that they should never have been removed. He put down his fork. You do this every time." Mom told him not to start. He started anyway. He brought up the college essay he asked me to edit when he was 19. I changed so much that it stopped sounding like him. He mentioned the clinic emails I had rewritten without showing him every revision. He said I had reorganized the registration table, changed the coach instructions, and corrected him in front of parents. Most of that was true. I had agreed to help, then acted as if knowing more about one part of the clinic gave me control over the rest. "I overstepped," I said. Caleb looked surprised. Then I added, "That doesn't excuse cutting the brakes." Dad leaned back in his chair. "No one said it did." But that was how arguments worked in our family. Once they proved I had been controlling before, they no longer had to deal with what I was saying now. I told Caleb I would return the next Saturday only if the approved schedule was followed. He agreed. Then he said the clinic was the first thing he had built that might last longer than a baseball season. His playing career had become a string of short contracts and promising calls that led nowhere. The clinic gave him something he could control. I understood why he was protective of it. My name was still printed in the parent packet under medical planning and safety review. If parents trusted the clinic because I had reviewed it, I could not ignore what happened after the paperwork was printed. "If you change the safety plan again, I'm out." Caleb nodded. I left believing he understood me. The next Saturday began better. The water breaks were back. Coaches had full coolers at every station. Caleb kept the photographer away from the drills. Morgan did not attend. At 10:15, Mom handed me coffee and said the morning proved everyone had learned something. Then she asked me not to mention the urgent care visit when the sponsor representatives arrived. I asked whether they knew what happened. Dad had told them a participant became lightheaded and left early. She lost consciousness. She's okay now. That doesn't change what happened. Mom lowered her voice. No one is asking you to lie. She only wanted me to avoid the most alarming version. I went to the registration table and opened the incident binder. My report was gone. A typed summary had replaced it. Participant experienced temporary dizziness during warm weather. Activity was paused. Parent elected medical evaluation. No ongoing treatment required. The delayed water break was missing. The coach's instruction was missing. My name appeared at the bottom under medical review. I found Dad near the parking lot. He said he rewrote the report because my version sounded accusatory. The original was in his office. Nothing had been destroyed. Why is my name on this? You evaluated her. I didn't review this report. It says medical review. You were the medical person there. I told him to remove my name. Dad looked toward the sponsor representatives walking across the parking lot. We can discuss wording later. Remove it now. Caleb joined us. Dad gave him the binder and walked toward the sponsor group. Caleb read the summary. It's accurate enough. Did Morgan lose consciousness? Yes. Did her coach delay water? He followed the schedule I gave him. So the schedule matters. Caleb rubbed both hands over his face. You want me to write that I caused a kid to pass out? I want the report to say what happened. The sponsor representatives were almost at the gate. Caleb closed the binder. Not today. I photographed the summary before he took it away. A few minutes later, Jordan Price asked to speak with me behind the batting cages. Jordan had played one season with Caleb in an independent league. The clinic was his first regular coaching job. He said Caleb had shortened breaks during private sessions before opening weekend. Coaches were told the schedule in the safety packet was a guideline, not a fixed rule. I asked him to repeat that to the complex manager. He refused. He needed the job. He did not want to be placed between Caleb and his sister. The breaks were back, and Morgan was recovering. I asked what he would say if the manager questioned him directly. Jordan looked toward the field. I'd answer what she asked. It was not a promise to help me. It was enough to confirm that opening day had not been a one-time mistake. That afternoon, Morgan's mother called. Her name was Rebecca Hayes. Morgan wanted to return, but Rebecca wanted to know what the clinic had changed. Dad had told her Morgan might have become anxious because she skipped breakfast. Rebecca said Morgan had eaten in the car. She asked whether the delayed water break contributed to what happened. I looked at the photograph of the typed summary. Yes. Rebecca became quiet. She asked for the incident report and the clinic's heat policy. I told her Caleb owned the program and should provide both. Dad called less than an hour later. Rebecca had emailed Caleb, the sports complex, and the sponsor. He said I should have directed her to Caleb without offering an opinion. She called the person whose name is under medical review. That only means you helped write the procedures. Then remove my name. Dad asked Caleb and me to come to the house that evening. The original report and the typed summary were waiting on the kitchen table. Dad had removed my name from the bottom of the summary. The wording had not changed. He said Rebecca could receive both documents with a short explanation that mine was a clinical account and his was an operational summary. I asked why one incident needed two versions. Because your version makes it sound like the entire clinic was unsafe. A child lost consciousness because her brake was removed. And the brake was restored. Caleb said the sponsor decision would be made Saturday. After that, he could hire an athletic trainer and stop using my name. Mom said no one was asking me to cover up an injury. They only wanted time to fix the program without frightening every parent. Caleb pushed my original report toward me. You helped build this. You stood at registration. You didn't check the final schedule either. I know. He stopped. I told him I should have checked the copies before the children arrived. That did not give him permission to rewrite what happened. Dad said I always turn disagreements into tests of character. This is about one report, he said, not whether Caleb is a good person. I didn't say it was. You don't have to. Caleb asked whether I wanted the clinic canceled. I said no. He asked whether I wanted the sponsor to walk away. I said I wanted Rebecca to receive the real report and parents to stop seeing my name on statements I had not reviewed. Mom asked for 5 more days. After Saturday, the sponsor decision would be over. Caleb could pay for his own trainer, and I could leave the clinic without making the transition look like a crisis. I gave Caleb until noon Friday to send Rebecca the original report and hire qualified coverage. If you don't, I remove myself. Caleb agreed. There was nothing else to discuss. Friday passed without Rebecca receiving the report. At 4:30, every parent received an email from Caleb. It said the clinic had reviewed a minor heat-related incident and strengthened its already effective hydration procedures. Morgan's name was not included. Neither was the delayed break, the loss of consciousness, or the urgent care visit. At the bottom was one sentence. The clinic's medical procedures were developed and reviewed with Tessa Monroe, RN. I called Caleb. You used my name again. The sentence is true. You changed the procedures after I reviewed them. And changed them back. The email makes it look like I approved your response. You approved the program. I told him to send a correction. He refused. Removing my name after Rebecca's questions would make the situation look worse. Then he said if I withdrew publicly, he would tell parents the entire story. I helped build the clinic. I failed to check the final schedule. I panicked after Morgan fainted. I tried to take control when Caleb would not follow every instruction I gave him. Some of that was true. That was why I had waited. I opened my laptop and wrote one email. I did not include a family history. I did not call Caleb irresponsible or accuse Dad of lying. I said I helped design the original safety procedures and failed to verify the final opening day schedule. The scheduled water breaks were shortened without my knowledge. A participant later required urgent medical evaluation. The clinic's summary did not include that sequence. I stated that I had not reviewed or approved Caleb's parent email. I would not provide medical coverage for the next session. I sent it to Caleb, my parents, Rebecca, the complex manager, and the sponsor representative. Then I called Marcy Bell, the complex manager. I told her children were scheduled to arrive the next morning, and the clinic did not have the qualified coverage Caleb had promised. Marcy said she would review the records before opening the fields. Dad called 6 times. Mom left one voicemail asking why I had turned a family disagreement into a public problem. Caleb sent one message, "You finally got what you wanted." I did not answer. Parents were already gathering when I reached the complex Saturday morning. The sponsor banner remained folded on the registration table. The coaches had not opened the batting cages. Marcy stood beside 2 clipboards while Caleb argued with her. The complex had paused the clinic. Marcy said the fields could open if Caleb hired qualified coverage and accepted the complex's heat policy without changes. Caleb pointed at me. "She's here." "I'm not covering the session." Dad asked to speak privately. "No." Rebecca stood with Morgan near the bleachers. Morgan looked tired but healthy. She held a water bottle in both hands. Caleb turned toward the waiting parents. He said the clinic was delayed because his sister had changed her expectations after helping create the program. Several parents looked at me. "He's right that I helped," I said. "I also failed to check the final schedule before opening day." Dad told me to stop. I continued. The breaks were shortened. Morgan lost consciousness. The clinic then sent a summary that left out the schedule change and urgent care visit. Caleb said the breaks had already been restored. Rebecca asked why she had been told her daughter skipped breakfast. Dad said that was information the clinic received. "From whom?" Rebecca asked. No one answered. Marcy placed the opening day schedule beside the approved heat policy. The times did not match. She asked Caleb whether the difference was a printing error. Caleb said coaches had discretion to adjust drills. Which coach changed it? Caleb looked toward Jordan. Jordan was managing that station. Jordan stopped carrying equipment. Caleb said coaches made real-time decisions based on conditions. Marcy asked Jordan whether he removed the break. Jordan walked over slowly. I followed the schedule Caleb gave us. Caleb said Jordan was trying to protect his job. Jordan's face tightened. You told us parents complained about too much downtime. Be careful. You said the written schedule was overly cautious. Jordan did not sound courageous. He sounded angry that Caleb had tried to place the decision on him. Coach Ralston confirmed that all coaches received the same schedule. Dad called the discussion an overreaction. Morgan recovered. The schedule had been corrected. No one denied that opening day could have been handled better. Marcy said the problem was no longer only the schedule. The clinic had provided conflicting accounts of a medical incident and used my name in a parent notice I said I had not approved. Caleb looked at the children waiting with gloves and bats. Then he looked at me. You're punishing 84 kids because I wouldn't let you run my business. I asked Marcy what would allow the clinic to operate that day. The complex had a certified athletic trainer covering a soccer tournament on the adjacent fields. A second trainer was available if Caleb paid the weekend staffing charge. Marcy showed him the amount. Dad said it was unreasonable. The sponsor representative said the larger equipment package would remain paused until the clinic completed a safety review. The store would still honor its basic equipment commitment. Caleb could continue. He just could not run the polished version he had planned. Dad told him not to sign anything before they spoke with an attorney. Caleb picked up the staffing agreement. He signed it. Then he canceled the video crew, the catered staff lunch, and the custom coach jackets. He told the assistants their stipends would be smaller for the first 2 weekends. Coach Ralston accepted. Jordan did too. The children would still receive shirts, equipment, and instruction. Marcy opened the fields. Parents began signing in. Caleb picked up the master parent packet and crossed out my name under medical planning and safety review. He did it himself. I collected my folder and stepped away from the table. The athletic trainer was named Dana Collins. Before the first drill, she reviewed emergency contacts, checked every cooler, and moved one child's inhaler from a parent's car into the field medical bag. She changed the check-in process so coaches could see which children had medication plans. She moved one station closer to the shade and shortened the afternoon rotations. No one argued with her. Dana had a contract, a defined job, and the authority to stop a drill. I stayed until the first rotation ended. Rebecca found me near the gate. Morgan had decided to return for 1 hour. Rebecca thanked me for correcting the record, then said she wished I had done it sooner. "You're right." She nodded and returned to the bleachers. Caleb called the following evening. Dana had found more problems. The emergency contacts were not organized by station. 2 coaches did not know which children had asthma plans. The clinic had no clear procedure for tracking early pickups. He said all of it could be fixed. I agreed. Then he admitted he had known Dad rewrote the incident report before our family dinner. Caleb believed it was harmless because the breaks had already been restored. He apologized for using my name in the parent email. I apologized for taking over parts of his project without asking and then acting surprised when he stopped treating my advice as advice. "That still doesn't make the report okay," he said. I know. Caleb planned to finish the 6 weekends with Dana, reduce enrollment for the fall clinic, and stop chasing the sponsor expansion until the program could operate without Dad covering every shortfall. He did not ask me to review the new plan. I did not volunteer. I moved to Milwaukee 2 weeks later. My parents helped carry boxes. Dad drove the truck. Mom packed the kitchen. Caleb assembled a bookshelf and did not ask where I wanted it until the frame was already against the wall. I pointed to the other side of the room. He moved it without arguing. When the truck was empty, Dad stood beside the open rear door and wiped his hands on his jeans. "I still think there was a better way to handle the clinic." There was. He waited before the report was changed. Dad looked toward the apartment building. He did not apologize. I did not restart the argument. The clinic completed all 6 weekends. Morgan attended 4 of them. Dana remained on staff. The sponsor did not fund a second location, but Caleb filled enough fall registrations to run a smaller program. Mom still said the conflict should have stayed private. Dad still believed I had damaged Caleb's reputation more than necessary. Caleb stopped using my name. That was enough for the moment. On the final clinic weekend, he sent me a photograph. The children were sitting in the shade during a water break. Dana stood beside the dugout with the medical bag. Caleb was crouched in front of a boy, showing him how to hold a bat. There was no sponsor banner. There was no video crew. My name was nowhere in the picture. I placed my phone beside my hospital badge and went back to work.